All right, I am joined on the phone right now by a man who has many similar characteristics to the late, great Ed Koch. Like Ed Koch was, the gentleman on the phone right now is a Democrat. Just like Ed Koch was, the gentleman on the phone right now is a judge. And just like Ed Koch was, in his last election that he won, the gentleman on the phone right now was endorsed by both the Democrat and Republican parties. But by far, the area where they share the most commonality is that they both had the same love of people and the same incredible electric charisma that seemed to just draw people to them like moths to a flame. And I speak, of course, of the one and only Surrogate Court Judge of Richmond County, better known as Staten Island, my friend, Bob Gigante. Judge, thanks so much for staying up late with us.
Thank you. After that introduction, I think I should just end this conversation.
Well, seriously, I know that you don't do a lot of radio interviews, and I know that we're friends, and I really appreciate you doing this interview with us. I know that a lot of folks who have achieved your level of judicial achievement don't need to do interviews, and a lot of them don't. So it really is a big help.
Mostly because you're prohibited, from doing political events, but this is talking about someone, after he has passed away, a leader that you and I both watched over the years, and so I don't consider this a violation of any of the rules of judicial conduct.
Certainly not. We'll do whatever we can to get you to violate the rules of judicial conduct within the next 10 minutes. So bear with us. Now, I don't want to remind you of, I don't want to, reflect back on any negative time in your life, but long before you were a judge, you were a politician. Your first race for political office, you ran for state senate, a very hotly contested state senate seat in 1978 against the legendary John Markey, who himself was also a friend of Ed Koch. Ed Koch had just gotten elected mayor of New York City the year before that, and then unfortunately you didn't win that state senate seat, but you remained active in politics and good government, especially Democratic Party politics, for years, running for Congress in 1980 and 1990, yourself becoming the chairman of the Democratic Party in Staten Island. How did you first get to meet Ed Koch, and what were your impressions of him back then?
Well, I was the law chairman of the Democratic Party under Nick LaPorte, and prior to that, I had been active in the Democratic Party, and in 1978, the party had approached me to consider running against John Markey, and obviously, it was a tall task. The party, under the leadership of Jim Smith and Nick LaPorte and other people, had come to me and asked me to consider running for the state senate, which, as you know, I decided to make that race, and that was really something that put me on the map here on Staten Island, and we came within 3,400 votes. And like I said, in the history of all John Markey's races, and here's a man who ran once for mayor,
twice for mayor.
Right, and he in his Senate races, nobody had ever come closer than 10,000 votes, and here, I was this upstart, and we lost by about 3,400 votes, and that was 1978, and so I did have his backing as the party's candidate in 1978, and then I proceeded the next 2 years to continue to work in the community and in the party, and was looking again to run in 1980, but I guess it was a good friend, Mark Canoe, who called me near the end of 1979 to tell me, and Mark was working for the mayor, and to tell me that Ed Koch was going to do his end-of-the-year interview with the Staten Island Advance, and at that time he was going to say that he was going to support John Markey for re-election in 1980. Okay, so, he was the ultimate politician in the sense that he gave me the heads up because he knew that I was planning to challenge him again. Yeah. I knew ahead of time, and obviously I was prepared for the press inquiries after the announcement was made. he advanced in his interview that he was going to support John Markey because he was the chairman of the finance committee, and he was vital to the city's economy in very dire straits at the time, and his record would show that over the years he would be hopeful. And so starting in 1980, Nick LaPorte was the county leader, and I decided, as you know, not to run, and I actually challenged Congressman Murphy in the primary for Congress instead.
Getting back to Koch, did you have an opportunity either in 1980 when you ran for Congress or in 1978 when you ran for state senate to campaign directly with him? And if so, what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, he was, and it's funny thinking about him today, and I spoke to someone else, and I said, I have a different take on what people are saying today, and my take was that he was the first Democrat to move the party, and I think today they call it, Democrat central, centric rather than, left-centric instead of all the way to the left as people are perceived. And you have to remember, Ed Koch came out of the Village Independent Democratic Club. He was the congressman from the elected out of the VID, and he was very much to the left politically when he was in Congress. And when he became mayor, he moved the Democratic Party to the center, more so than before President Clinton did, and of course before Obama did. And he was really the first major Democratic candidate to make that shift and start to move the Democratic Party from the far left to being central left, if you want to call it that, and which some people call today. And I think that most people didn't expect that when he won the primary to become the mayor.
And then how about in terms of him personally? What was he like personally?
He was very engaging, and he did, he came out here to have dinner at Nick LaPorte's house, and he would come out for small meetings. He was not, at that time, in especially early on in his mayoral career, later on it became larger than life, as you know, but his own persona was not that way when he first became mayor, and he preferred to come out and have dinner at Nick LaPorte's house or with 4 or 5 people of the party to talk about Staten Island issues, etc. And so later in life, he became a much bigger persona, and I think he even said once himself he became, larger than life at one point because he felt that's what he had to do to be this charismatic leader of New York, and he left his real personality and became this, well-known figure that the rest of the country looked at as being, the significant leader of New York City at that time through tough times.
Yeah, if folks are just tuning in, we're talking with Judge Robert Gigante. He's the Surrogate Court Judge in Richmond County. And before that, he was very, very active in Democratic Party politics. Now, Judge, unlike a lot of other mayors of both parties, Ed Koch really remained kind of a political power broker literally until the day he died. This is not the case with Mayor Dinkins, was not the case with Mayor Wagner and Mayor Lindsay. You became the chairman of the Democratic Party in Staten Island shortly after Koch left the mayoralty. What, if anything, what were your interactions with him like as chairman when he was a former mayor?
Well, when he was former mayor, like you said, as opposed to some of the other mayors, he continued to thrive on trying to help the party. And he also not only felt that he represented the city, but he prided himself in trying to do things with the outer boroughs. And I think that he felt that his legacy was going to live on if he continued to, be vocal and obviously controversial at times, but also to remain in the public life because he had a love for the city, and he was not about to, just retire or go on corporate boards or do things that some of, our other leaders have done. And in that sense, that he was always fully supportive. And another person who knew him well and right to the very end, John Del Giorno. And I remember when John Del Giorno ran for council, that the support that Koch gave him, and he would come to events and he would speak on behalf of Democratic candidates, and all you needed was a phone call, and he would meet the candidate first, and once he met the candidate and he felt that this was something that he could put his imprimatur on, he was not reluctant to get on the ferry or, take a car and come to Staten Island as so many other people do. You didn't have to go to the steps of City Hall or meet him in the city to get an endorsement. He was one of those people that he'd come out here because he had fond memories of Staten Island.
Well, what do you think Ed Koch's legacy to this city is?
Well, I think that one of the things is he established an identity for New Yorkers to be proud of the fact, and despite all the problems that he endured, at the time that he was mayor, I think he created an image for the rest of the country, well before obviously 9/11, that this was a tough city, but the greatest city in the world.
Yeah, no, I think that I would certainly agree with that 100%. Lastly, because you're a judge, I want to tap into a little bit of your judicial expertise. Something that I've heard a lot of folks say over the years, and even today I've heard it quite a bit, is that Ed Koch kind of transformed the way judges were appointed in New York City, particularly in the criminal court. I realize you were elected a judge after Koch left the mayoralty, but based on being a lawyer and being a student of judicial politics in this city, was that your experience? Did Koch change how judges were appointed, and if so, how did he do that?
Well, I think because number one, he was a lawyer, and he had a great respect for the members of the bar and the local bar, and he would obviously have the choice of picking, as you know, the family court judges and the criminal court judges, etc., who are part of the judicial system that actually get selected by the mayor, and still to this day, and whereas the civil court judges and the Supreme Court judges, etc., run for election. But those two are the beginnings of the system, and because he would interview them himself personally much more than I think it was ever done in the past. I think in the past they would be given a list of 3 qualified candidates, and it was almost perfunctory. They would interview, and they were almost preordained. But you could walk into an Ed Koch interview for a judgeship and leave and not know whether you were going to get a judgeship or not, because he really took that as a serious part of his obligation as a mayor because of his training as a lawyer, and also because he was a congressman. He looked at it in a different light than a lot of other people. And you're right, he probably established a pattern that, is much more realistic today and came out of the way he practiced politics as politics into the judicial circle.
Well, Judge Robert Gigante, always such a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you for staying up late with us.
Take care. Have a good evening.